everybody. My name is Anita Cunnigham, and I am the Executive Director for the North Carolina Climate Solutions Coalition. I am also the Executive Director for a small nonprofit, Community Partners Across the South in Robeson County. And I am a member of the People's Environmental Justice Advisory Council, formerly the WEJAC, and I'm happy to be here. I'm not sure who with NCEJN was responsible for the vetting process and giving me this microphone, but that was Rania, but now that I have it, I don't know. I do want to say welcome to the Solidarity Economy during the Climate Crisis panel. We have a very distinguished panel. I've been working with this panel of folks as well as NCEJN over these few months to develop this panel. I'm hoping that you'll enjoy the conversation, that you'll have questions, and that you'll want to share whatever work that you're doing as it relates to Solidarity Economy. I'm gonna first invite the panelists to introduce themselves, and then we'll get into the conversation. Okay.
Check. Okay, hi, I'm Devin. I work with Triangle Mutual Aid, founding organizer of Triangle Mutual Aid. It's a large mutual aid network in Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill area.
My name is Mychaela. I also go by MJ, and I'm a mutual aid organizer in Wilmington with the organization Liberate ILM.
Greetings, family. My name's Erin, and I am the president of Fertile Ground Food Cooperative in Raleigh, North Carolina, and the executive director of the Partnership Funds and the Collective Courage Fund.
Good morning, I'm Dani Brockington, Director of Storytelling at the Guild out of Atlanta. And even though I'm coming all the way from Atlanta, I've lived in Charlotte for the past, since college, so since high school actually, so like 25 years, so I'm a North Carolinian.
Good morning, my name is Thea Yang. I'm the Values and Culture Director at the Industrial Commons. We're based in Western North Carolina, and we create worker-owned businesses and support other cooperatives.
Great, thank you so much. So we're gonna do this in 3 parts. We're gonna have some questions for the panelists. We're gonna take about 10 minutes each for folks to share on the questions. Then we're gonna have an audience Q&A. We're gonna do that for about 20 minutes if we stay on task. And then we're gonna have the audience breakout sessions, which you will be given some questions and have a conversation at the folks in your session. So I'd like to start off by saying Solidarity Economy is really something that is addressing people helping each other, building together and creating systems that embrace justice, equality, and certainly shared power, right? And that's what we're doing here this weekend, is building people power, and I'm all into that. So let's dive in. So the first question I have, Devin, you've worked extensively with disaster recovery and mutual aid and spoken about anti-fragility. As things get worse and tension increases, as programs go away, as racism heightens, how can you arrange things so that we capture the energy instead of being locked into a defensive space? And then what are some other models, and then how do you see communities shifting from a reactive kind of crisis response mode into like building sustainable systems of care and resistance?
Okay, so this idea of anti-fragility, which is a phrase and a concept that I am borrowing from a book. It's a horrible book, don't read it. But important concepts. And it's it resonates with me because it's something that I observe, especially during times of disaster or disaster recovery, and the way that mutual aid is able to meet those moments. And even in the question, we're used to thinking of concepts like sustainability or resilience. So something is fragile if it breaks under stress, right? And we spend our time in our lives, in our bodies, in our minds, in our organizations, trying to build resilience so that we can withstand that stress. Anti-fragility is this intriguing concept and pattern of things that thrive under stress. Certain types of stressors open the gates for mutual aid. And we see far more activity, far more effective activity. We go beyond resilience. We are actually coming into our own as other things disappear. It thrives, and I'll give you some examples. Like we were a relatively small group of people, 20, 25 people, having meetings, discussing things, teaching each other about work of disaster recovery, teaching each other things about conflict resolution, teaching each other things about horizontal organizing, and then Hurricane Helene happened. And hundreds and hundreds of people said, we want to help. What do we do? How do we plug in? And because of the way that we organized, we were able to have a pattern that people were able to grab hold of and did amazing things. And not only did we move tons of material into Western North Carolina, and many, many people were able to plug in. There were 2 warehouses that were donated in the Triangle, so people join in that moment, in that spirit. And I think we see that little spirit like many of us are thinking about friends and comrades who are out at these big marches today. We see people wanting to be active as fascism consolidates in the United States. We saw that in the Triangle right after the election. In fact, we prepared for it. We prepared a series of community assemblies, and we're able to, because of the way that we organize, capture some of that energy into many different working groups where people were able to do the things that they wanted to do and to come alive. And I think the fact that that energy comes not only after a hurricane, when we know what's going on and what to do, but also after these political upheavals, suggests what type of thing it is, what type of stress it is that makes mutual aid come alive. It's the stress of there not being someone else to come rescue us. It's the stress of that government not being there, that those answers are too little, too late, insufficient, not there, and now maybe even organizing and acting actively against us. In those moments, that's stripped away. What you think you know, what you think is going to take care of things is gone. And people look around, and what is there all the time underneath rises to the surface. As human beings, we know how to take care of each other. As communities of people, we have deep ancestral memories of how to move. Oh, something's going on behind me here. And we organize in a way that welcomes that welcomes people in their entirety. We say, who are you? What skills do you have? What do you bring to the table? What do you want to do? How can we empower that? How can we facilitate that? We don't tell people to go to a march and then go home. We don't tell people to go vote for someone and put their hopes in someone else. We say, we welcome your entire self. And time and time again, I've seen people come truly alive in that moment. People are ecstatic about being in a position where they are surrounded by an economy of abundance and generosity, and where their entire self is welcome, that's what's needed. When it happens well, it organizes itself. It just happens. People grab that idea. In the pandemic, people downloaded examples of masks to sew, and they just did it, and they just spread it. They didn't need someone to go door to door and ask them to do that. When we do organize, we organize in a way that we don't become the answer. We facilitate the answer that is already there in the community. We provide reimbursements, we provide materials, we provide spaces, we provide vehicles, but we're not the answer. We're just a place where people can coordinate and then go back and do their things. And I think that suggests to us as organizers, as people in nonprofits and other places, a way to relate to mutual aid. Don't try to capture it. Don't try to be the answer, because then the fire stops. And you notice this. Once the government comes back online, once there is an answer, people are like, okay, it's taken care of. We don't want that. We want that to continue because we don't know where it could stop. It could keep going forever. We could just remember that we can take care of each other and that what we need is resources, not someone to tell us what to do.
Thank you so much. So my next question is for Mychaela. In discussions that we've had, you've described mutual aid as rooted in self-defense, especially in places like Wilmington, where white supremacist groups are active. How do you distinguish between charity, mutual aid, and collective self-defense? What lessons can today's Solidarity economy movements learn from the Panthers, the Black Liberation Army, and other militant traditions? If you can share on that.
I just want to start by saying that this is the first time that I've spoken at anything like this. So I really appreciate being invited here, and just bear with me as I'm responding to the questions. So I want to start by giving background to Wilmington, which I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with. But the racial violence that we've been subjected to is extreme. In 1898, there was a coup in Wilmington where 2,000 white supremacists across the state, led by what was referred to as the Secret Nine, overthrew the government, displaced black people, murdered hundreds of black people because we had a fusionist mixed-race government. And those people are like Thomas Mears, Alfred Waddell, William Rand Keenan. All of those people are still honored in Wilmington now, through statues, through names at their schools, streets, everything to that nature. That violent coup didn't happen in a vacuum, and the impacts of it are still obvious in Wilmington. We have active white supremacist groups like the Proud Boys who have been more than willing to commit violence against homeless people, to brandish weapons against organizers. On more covert levels, we're seeing de facto segregation, we're seeing a huge wealth disparity in Wilmington, we're seeing gentrification that caused me to lose my housing, and we're seeing a lot of environmental racism where the state cannot respond to the environmental disasters that we're experiencing. With these conditions, while I was radicalizing myself and when I was beginning to organize in 2020, I realized that I wasn't just an unlucky individual. I wasn't just in an unfair situation, but that the state was intentionally depriving me of the things that I needed to have a dignified life. That was through capitalism, that was through white supremacy. And when the state has decided that you specifically do not deserve the things to sustain your life, to have the necessities that you need, that is a declaration of war. And so that's why I understood that I had to take a self-defense position and begin to organize through mutual aid. And with that, I had to make some distinctions between what mutual aid actually is, what we understand charity to be, and what collective self-defense was, which I think has a lot of overlap in mutual aid. Charity historically has been tied to the Catholic Church, so if you're a really bad person but you had a lot of money, you could give all of your money to the Catholic Church and all your sins would be absolved and you would go to heaven, and that was like the whole thing. Today we see charity through nonprofits, don't get upset at me, but nonprofits, 501c3s, so tax exemptions, NGOs, philanthropy, which have a lot of critiques. They're highly focused on one specific social issue, so anybody that needs any other help will have to find some other resource. Hierarchical, so they report to a board who makes all of their decisions, and there's not necessarily general consensus. They're beholden to what the funders demand. So if the funder says that you can't say this about this, you lose your funding, and I think we're experiencing that now. And because a lot of people are employed at nonprofits, it functions as a job. So you work in a nonprofit, you do your work, and you can go home because maybe you don't have actual ties to the community that you're providing these services in. And there's also a bit of a deceptive nature to even the term nonprofit, because we understand that this is a multi-billion-dollar industry where a lot of that money, I think there was a report in 2023, but 60% of that money was going to the salaries of the employees, so not back into the community directly. And that's not to say that there's no good work coming out of nonprofits. That's not to say that there isn't a net positive of nonprofits, but we have to understand the systems that they operate under, which is capitalism, which is white supremacy. Mutual aid, by contrast, is survival, period. We have to distribute resources amongst ourselves to survive, to sustain our communities, or else we'll die. There's no other option there. We have to be horizontal, so in my organization, there is no leadership. We all have to make a general consensus. We're all regular individuals who are experiencing the same oppression and subjugation. It's reciprocal, so if you come and get resources, you also come and bring your resources, you bring your skills that can be utilized. And so like I said before, when I was understanding that this was state violence, that this was intentional neglect of us, intentional organized abandonment, we had to have an equal response to the state. And the state is militant. We have to also provide a level of militancy to our mutual aid. So when we're doing food distributions, when we're doing clothing distributions, when we're tenant organizing or responding to disaster or political education, there is collective self-defense in that, even if we want to go so far as to have armed self-defense. So mutual aid isn't really like charity's polite cousin. The ultimate goal is not to make us feel better or to have like volunteering. It is as a tactic to build a socialist or communist structure. One second. And so like I mentioned before, when I was learning about this, the best example of mutual aid in the United States is the Black Panthers. And what they were doing, how they started in Oakland through Bobby Seals and Huey P. Newton, was providing services to their community, such as free breakfast programs, free health clinics. There was also a lot of political education. You had to do 6 weeks of political education to enter. And this was all mutual aid. And they were arming themselves. They were responding to the violence that the state had against them. So we need a level of confrontation. We need to be able to understand that things will not get better if we are trying to just volunteer and go home, that this isn't a hobby. When I'm referring to militancy, it's not just armed self-defense, but it is a continual commitment to the struggle and a continual commitment to our ultimate goal of socialism and abolishing capitalism, abolishing white supremacy, abolishing imperialism, and not engaging in necropolitics, which capitalism upholds. So we're not going to let people die and give some people a good life. So yeah, I think that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate I appreciate the instructions about kind of building a political backbone, and that's really what we need to do, so thank you. Okay, so the question for Erin is, you've led both political power building efforts and cooperative economic projects. What is your personal theory of change, and how did it develop over time? Also, what do you believe cooperatives and solidarity economy institutions are uniquely suited to build liberation compared to other organizations or political forums?
Greetings, beloved. My heart is beating so fast right now. I speak in different places, so I know it's the spirit that's in this place that's making my heart beat so. Yeah, ashe, ashe. That's the spirit in this place. And I want to give thanks to you. I want to give thanks to my beloved and enlightened ancestors that walk with me. And I want to give thanks to the Most High for the chance to be with you. This place has a lot of memories for me. I mean, I'm just so overwhelmed by so many of them. And I want to say Lanice Williams from North Carolina Fair Share. There's also one of the founding leaders of this organization. I want to say Cynthia Brown. I want to say Jim Grant. And I needed to say that one of my earliest memories is with Lanice's doing Reader's Theater here with my sister in one of these rooms so long ago. It's been like so long ago. So I come to you as a child of Black Workers for Justice, which is my political home, and my gratitude for BWFJ is so deep. And I also bring you greetings from the board of Fertile Ground Food Cooperative. I came to North Carolina as a voting rights activist, so a lot of my work was rooted in money and politics, and so fighting for public funding of elections, and also in same-day voter registration campaign, which I was the coordinator of. Because of Lanice Williams, you have same-day voter registration in our state, so I just want to say that. Asheo, that's right. And then I was here with BOLD, Black Organizers for Leadership and Dignity. And in 2012, here on this site, I have a picture in the housing unit where I made a commitment. They made us all make movement commitments, and they took pictures of them, right? So my commitment is, I am a commitment to building a cooperative economy where my people own their own labor and live in their purpose. And I embody that commitment every day. I am deeply, deeply committed to it. And one of the ways I've shown that commitment is as a volunteer founding owner of Fertile Ground, and I've been involved in that effort for the last 13 years. That's community meetings every month or every other month. That's board meetings every month. That's multiple mini meetings. Much, much time. And it is one of the great loves. We started with 8 people and $800, and now we have raised about $5.5 million, and we have over 1,000 owners. And Ashe, that's right. And I give thanks to every single member of Fertile Ground, if there are any here, and every single board member. One of the things about doing nonprofit work, as you were talking about, I was the executive director of Blueprint North Carolina for 12 years. And I also helped, during my time, start a number of other nonprofits. Democracy North Carolina, Advance North Carolina, Lead NC, and I could go on. And one of the things I looked up one day, but I felt so empty, because the reality is you can start as many nonprofits as you want. The material conditions are not changing. And that is the problem. And so when I sat on that, I studied with cooperators, particularly the folks here in North Carolina. There was a co-op econ that we all traveled to. There were a number of things. And I realized that I wanted to be a cooperator because that is such a different way of organizing. You use the term horizontal, which I appreciate. I would use the term circle, right? So we sit in a circle, and as a cooperator, I work with other people, and we are all equal. We are all owners of the enterprise. It is not a nonprofit. It is a for-profit. And the reason that that touches me so, sitting as equals, is because I fought alongside many others that had fought many more years than me. Bob Hall, Lenise, so many others, they gave their 50 years of their lives for democracy. And the system that we have is not one where we experience democracy, we practice democracy. There's a difference between experiencing democracy and practicing democracy. When you experience democracy, you make decisions about your life democratically, whether it's your job, where you get your food from, where you make decisions. When you practice democracy, you go out and you vote on a ballot. Yeah. And unfortunately, with redistricting and other things, y'all know it doesn't matter if we all vote. Sometimes it's just not going to be enough because the system itself is rigged. So you can practice all you want in a rigged system. You're going to get a rigged outcome. I'm not telling people not to vote. I hope you hear me. I'm not saying that. I'm just acknowledging the reality. And so I became a cooperator. And one of the other why, one is Ella Baker was a cooperator, A. Philip Randolph is a cooperator, Fannie Lou Hamer is a cooperator, W.E. Du Bois is a cooperator. This institution that you're on was a cooperative development organization and school for many, many years. We were sitting in one of the country's democratic cooperative development land-based spiritual homes. Cooperatives, I'm going to name their values: voluntary and open membership, democratic member control, member economic participation, autonomy and independence, education, training, and information, cooperation among cooperatives, concern for community and diversity, equity, and inclusion. There is no doubt we're in a poly crisis. And there are a couple of things that root that. One is individualism and isolation. One is capitalism. One is fascism, and there are many others. And in my assessment, cooperatives build belonging. They build shared decision-making, right? One person, one vote. I am the president. I can be unelected. The owners get together and I'm out of there. In a nonprofit, as many community members can get together as they want. They can't get rid of the board chair because the boards are self-nominating many times. So that deep democracy in the cooperative movement inspires me. I want to offer, there's a book that is leading thinking for Black cooperative developers across the country called Collective Courage, the history of Black cooperative economic thought and practice. Collective Courage, the history of Black cooperative economic thought and practice. The last thing I want to say is that elections are a $60 billion industry. And the majority of that money, 92%, goes to a profiteering class. Not down to community organizations doing GOTV, and not down to folks doing the work in the ground. And we need to change that system. I have thoughts about that as well, and I'd love to talk to folks about it. How much time do I have left? 1 minute. Okay, so I'll close with I love you, you love me, we're a perfect family.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so now I'm going to go to Thea. The Industrial Commons was born from tackling specific local economic challenges in Western North Carolina. How do you find and hold common ground across divides, especially when working with unlikely allies like conservative officials? And in your work, how have you seen co-ops and mutual aid function as a return to deeply human, historic ways of caring for each other?
Thank you. I'm scared to go after all of these amazing people. First of all, I want to thank NCEJN. This is my first time participating in a panel for them. Thank you to all of the wonderful planners. Logistics is really hard, I know that firsthand, for this beautiful venue and for the staff here and organizers, and I want to thank the interpreters as well. So I want to start by actually telling you a little bit about myself before I talk about the Industrial Commons. The reason I'm doing that is because I don't feel like an expert in the mutual aid field, in the solidarity economy, or even cooperatives. The way that I've been able to understand these principles is to look at my own culture and find common ground in what I was taught. So I am a former Hmong refugee from Laos. My family immigrated to the United States in 1989, stemming from the Vietnam War conflict. We had aided the CIA in that war, and when they lost, the US pulled out, took about 2,000 of our leaders, and left the rest of us to perish. And so, like many families, we had to trek through the Laotian jungles, cross the Mekong River, and try to get to the refugee camps in Thailand. And so we were very fortunate that we survived that journey. And I'm thinking about Hmong society and Hmong culture and Hmong structure and the ideas of mutual aid and the solidarity economy. There are, mutual aid and solidarity economy is not something that's crazy, radical left. It's been really how many societies all over the world have functioned for centuries. Hmong society is based on clanship, C-L-A-N. We have 18 clans denoted by your last names, and what we call an exchange of labor. So that's kind of like a principle under mutual aid, which is the members in your clan and cross clans help one another. So just for example, maybe you're throwing an event for a naming ceremony, right? It's not, my family will do everything and then the guest comes and enjoys themselves. It's other families are coming to help because there's the mutual agreement that when they have something, we go and help as well. And that is practiced through things like funerals, weddings, etc. And in that way, it's not always the individual that's responsible for major decision-making. It's family members and clan members. But I don't want to sugarcoat it because in some societies, there's still practice mutual aid, there's still a lot of issues. For example, Hmong society is very patriarchal, but that's changing now with the younger generation. But I'm reminded of a quote by the wonderful late Nelson Mandela, the idea of you must also free the oppressed along with the oppressors. And I say this because I had asked my father, who fought as a child soldier under the CIA against the North Vietnamese, I had asked him what he thought about fighting in that war. And he said, it didn't matter what side you were on, the propaganda happens either way, right? He wasn't part of the first wave that went in, he was always part of the second wave of soldiers. And in one instance, they went in after a battle, and the North Vietnamese soldiers that were killed by that first wave were chained to their anti-artillery aircraft guns. So they didn't have a choice but to shoot as well. And that changes perspective about who were the good guys and who were the bad guys. Coming out of that war, it wasn't a me versus you thing because he saw that soldier who was his supposed enemy chained to his gun. And so my understanding of mutual aid and solidarity economy really focuses on community and helping one another and really striving to free others. As Nelson Mandela said, the oppressed are also imprisoned by hatred, by propaganda, by self-hate sometimes. And as long as we're only freeing the oppressed, there will always be oppressors to oppress someone. So that's just my personal, it's my dad calling. He's knocked out my notes. Weird, because I'm talking about him. Okay, yeah. Oh gosh, that is kind of weird. I think he knows. He tells me, daughter, if you do anything bad, there's an electrical cord and you shock me. But I'm not, and then when I'm doing something really good, it's the same thing. So I think it's the good one. But let me, Daddy. Hold on, let me pull back my notes. I was on a roll. That being said, I have great respect for people who, in all forms of advocacy, in all forms of ways to support mutual aid and the principles, there are so many ways to organize. And I want to talk about the Industrial Commons, which is a nonprofit, 501c3. We are based in Morganton, Western North Carolina, so I took a 4-hour drive this morning, and the sun was like the whole time, but I made it here. The Industrial Commons was really born out of a need to solve some local problems that we had in the workforce. And that's one thing I love about mutual aid. It's like, what are the issues in my community where nobody else is working on it, and we, the people, have to figure something out. So Western North Carolina is known for textiles and furniture, a very deep history of craftsmanship, and with NAFTA and in 2008, all of that left and went overseas because the owners of these companies were overseas. And our wonderful co-founders, Molly Hemstree and Sarah Chester, wanted to do things differently. Neither of them worked in, nonprofit. They were educators and in local economic development. And they started researching different economies around the world and really fell in love with the concept of cooperatives. One in Mondragon, Spain, in the Basque region, and then Emilia-Romagna in Italy. And these were born. These are about 80 plus years old, and they were born really out of resisting fascism, but also the concept of self-help. Nobody's coming to help us. We're gonna do this, and the policies will just have to follow. There were no laws and policies to create cooperatives. The policies had to follow afterward. And we went to visit them, and I just got back last Friday, actually, so it was really cool. Oh, a lot of pasta. And so for us in Western North Carolina, we wanted to create cooperative businesses. But what's really challenging is that we are in a pretty red area. Well, very red area. But then we also knew that it's a small community, no matter where your political leanings are. And your doctor could be your kid's baseball coach, and your teacher could be somebody you're in church with, So we tapped into, and I know I'm running short on time, we tapped into our textile expertise and tapped into looked at the issues there as well. As wonderful as that industry was, it was very extractive of the people that worked there, and it created a lot of environmental issues with textile waste going into landfills. And so the Industrial Commons was created to create what we call a circular economy, where we pick up textile waste, deaggregate it. There's a whole R&D process that I'm not the expert on. And it saves it from the landfill, turns it back into a yarn that goes back into manufacturers. And so that's closed loop. And these businesses are supported by social cooperatives like workforce development, leadership training, growing our own, working with our K-12 programming to talk to them about cooperatives and what that looks like in our region. And we're supported by a lot of our allies who are very right-leaning, because our common ground is that we are an economic engine. No matter where you are on your leanings, everybody can get behind economics. And that's our common ground that we have found. And I'm happy to take more questions. I just kind of yammered on.
Thank you, thank you. And y'all have time for questions as you're forming, after these discussions, time for questions and answers very shortly. So our last speaker is Dani, and Dani has a presentation that she's going to show. We're going to pull that up. And I know you focus on making the solidarity economy feel tangible and achievable. And as you were presenting, and if you could share, like, what kinds of stories or cultural practices help people see the work as accessible more than abstract or polarizing. And when we talk about building solidarity economy infrastructure, what does sustainable stewardship and governance look like in practice? So as you're doing your presentation, part of that.
Thank y'all. And I'm actually gonna there's so much more to say. Thank you, all of this has just been amazing. So I'm pulling in various things as my brain is running very quickly. So to answer this question, I have to get into what the Guild is and what we do and who we are. We are a worker-owned cooperative. We're not a nonprofit for a reason. That was a deliberate decision on the part of our founder and CEO, Mychaela. We became Georgia's first, we didn't start out as a worker-owned co-op. We became Georgia's first co-op conversion in 2022, which is wild to me and shows how much further this work has to go, because how were we the first this late? But we are basically an anti-capitalist real estate company. We take housing, we take property off the market and use various models of community ownership to keep it off the market and keep it permanently affordable. And one way, this is a redlining map of Atlanta, and one way, getting back into the question of how do we make this tangible and achievable, how are we crossing lines and bringing people into it? Everybody in Atlanta gets this. The street names change names at a certain point depending on whether you are on the white side of Atlanta or the black side of Atlanta. These lines are very much underpinning everything. Policing, how policing shows up in neighborhoods, education, environmental issues, health disparities. Real estate is the unseen hand underpinning all of this, and everybody kind of gets that, no matter what political, cultural, or either socioeconomic ground you stand on. And so even these numbers, this landscape that we're in, where this number, where 3 companies own more than 19,000 rental houses, it's actually 38,000. That number is actually inaccurate. In certain black suburbs of Atlanta, in the metro area, 76% of all single-family homes are owned by corporate landlords. It's been a complete, the people who gentrified the neighborhoods 5 years ago can't afford to be in the neighborhoods, the taxes done gone up. So they got to move out. So everybody is feeling this crunch. And we've been able to build a base, and we've been able to build coalition because this is happening to everybody. Like, no one is immune to this, and everyone sees it. So what we do is look at the root causes of systemic inequality with real estate as that underpinning. Follow the money, like we said yesterday. Looking at furthering living wages and employee ownership, and furthering and nurturing and incubating worker-owned cooperatives. Developing vacant and underutilized assets into community ownership via the models that we use, and investing in building a ecosystem for both that kind of reparative real estate development and for building solidarity economy infrastructure. And we're not doing this from scratch, right? Like Thea mentioned, this is what we've naturally done before the current paradigm interrupted all that. It is not lost on me that the very first thing that newly emancipated people did after, sorry, I got thrown off my train of thought. The very first thing that people did after emancipation was pool money together to purchase property, to buy parks, to celebrate what is now known as Juneteenth. And those parks, they didn't have the money to operate those parks but that one day a year. But those spaces were that important and that critical for political education, for connecting with one another, for reconnecting families, for all of these other things that were being hidden under, oh, we're having this big celebration to celebrate emancipation, but these were actually sites of deep community, deep activism work happening. And we have the example of the first CLT, New Communities Farm in Albany, which was a direct response to the theft and the loss of Black land. And it was a cooperative space that not only did they have a grocery cooperative and a growing cooperative, and also for meats and pig slaughtering and all these other things. And we're resting in that example. We're resting in that example as we move forward. So we have two models that we use. We have the People's Community Land Trust, which is a CLT, and we have the Community Stewardship Trust, which is modeled after an example of Mercy Corps in Portland. That is, the PCLT focuses on housing, while the CST focuses on mixed use and commercial spaces. The CST also involves an investment vehicle that allows folks within neighborhoods to invest in shares of the CST that owns these properties and co-own them together, but also co-govern them together. And the governance piece is the underpinning of all of this that really makes it special and really makes it that piece that we are living into and making this accessible and real and appealing for people. It's the exciting part for me. This is just pictures from the People's Community Land Trust. Our PCLT, actually a lot of CLTs focus on home ownership and keeping home ownership affordable. Where we've ended up focusing is on rentals. So both of our properties right now in the PCLT are rentals. One is a multifamily. We were actually able to bring rents down at that apartment complex once it entered the PCLT. And there's a governance underpinning. They have tenant meetings, and they are running the governance of this space. The Community Stewardship Trust, we have 4 buildings currently that are entering the trust soon. The first one to enter and 3 of them are on the same block. The first one to enter is 918 Dill Avenue. It's going to be mixed use. And this is just an example of the governance of the Community Stewardship Trust, where we're this circle model that we've built as the CST governance, we've actually taken that and modeled it back into our own co-op, and that's how because we grew from 4 people to 7 people in a very short period of time. So we're living these models as we go along. And everything within the Community Stewardship Trust is a co-design process. So we are constantly taking feedback, giving feedback, and working in collaboration with community on these spaces. Our first building to enter the CST, this one we are finally opening in January. And it's going to be 18 units of housing up top, and the ground floor, it is an adaptive reuse, so the ground floor building was already existing, and we are opening a Solidarity Economy Lab, a community-scale grocery store, 3 restaurants within the grocery store that are local food entrepreneurs. And all of these spaces, we've just been able to take spaces, and these are the ones that are coming up in development soon. The MRF is another space that it's already a piece of movement infrastructure. It's started by folks from Southerners the property was actually owned by Southerners from New Ground, and we were able to enter into a joint partnership with them and come in as the developer on some renovations and new build out for the building, and the building is going to enter the CST, and so it becomes a permanent space for that movement infrastructure that is already operating, that people are already engaged in. And so when we talk about building a solidarity economy and building institutions within a solidarity economy, this is what you need the physical as well as the psychological space to actually do that. And so this is how we make that sustainable. And just my last thing, that last summer, before the CST, for the investment piece, we have to do financial education as a requirement for the SEC. And as we built that out, we said, why don't we make this an offering that can be for more than just for the CST investors and more than just because what we're doing is imagining a completely different way of what people are accustomed to. So we built out this curriculum that was a solidarity economy curriculum. So we had 6 sessions over the last summer, of curriculum where we brought people in to what is the solidarity economy and how are you already doing these things in your regular life? How can you plug into all of these different things that are happening around you and really activate yourself where it goes beyond just going to a protest and going home? How do you make this integrated into your day-to-day life?
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. I want to thank all the panelists. I learned so much. I appreciate you guys. Let's give them another round of applause. I mean, amazing, amazing. Thank you. So we do have time for some questions and answers. I think there's some folks out there with mics. If you need to ask questions, raise your hand. Is that right?
Thank you so much for all of the presentations and all of the different perspectives that come from different places. I have a bunch of questions. So maybe, MJ, maybe I'll start with you. I'm really curious about the decision to have like a horizontal structure when you guys are kind of following in the footsteps of the Black Panthers, which had like a very clear structure and a lot of leadership. So I'm curious kind of where that decision comes from and what your thoughts are around that.
was going to say.
So just for time management, if we can keep the I know, I'm difficult. If we can keep the questions to 1 minute, a minute and a half,
Yeah.
we'll take 3 questions at a time. That way then the speakers have time to also think about the answers, and then we have a time to come back to you all for 3-minute answers total each. Does that make
Great.
sense? We're good? Okay.
Okay, sorry. I think my second question's for Devin, and I'm very curious to understand kind of the link between the work that you do to the communities that you're benefiting and the link between the people that do the work to the community that's benefiting from that work. And also, I guess, the line between like what is mutual aid and what charity is and how you, I guess, like toe that line and what that looks like. I do have a question for the Guild for about, I'm so sorry, about like what collective governance looks like and what navigating that has looked like. Okay.
So does anybody else have a question? We're going to group a couple, 2 or 3, and then we can hear from our panelists.
Please raise your hand if you have a question.
I have a question for the young lady from Wilmington, and you mentioned the statues and stuff that are still there in the schools being named after these murderers, I would say. Has anything been done to try to rectify that or, tear them down or?
Okay. So, okay, thank you. So, Mychaela, are you going to take that first question?
Okay.
Okay.
Starting with that first question, so I would say as like a student of the Panthers, as a student of the Black Liberation Army and the Black radical tradition in general, one of the things that I would say contributed to the collapse of the Black Panther Party was the highly centralized power. So the fact that there was such a rigid hierarchy, that there was a group of people that made all the decisions in one particular area, so that being California, while there was a bunch of different chapters, led to people not feeling like they were ideologically aligned with the Panthers anymore, felt that the material conditions differed so much that one person over here couldn't make all the decisions. And so for us, because Wilmington is not necessarily dense, we all live in different areas, I think having horizontal organization allows for more consensus. So we don't make any decisions unless everybody agrees and it's effective and it's at our actual capacity. So yeah, that's just one critique that I would have of the Panthers. As far as the memorials to the murderers, so we've tried a bunch of different things. We had a park, Hugh McCrae Park, that was named after one of the funders of the 1898 coup. That was renamed to Longleaf Park. There was a lot of decision-making within City Council when we were talking about removing these statues. 2 were removed. We still have one in the downtown area dedicated to William Rand Keenan. And when they were having these debates in City Council, essentially, they were like, we don't care. We don't care that you guys are upset about this. We'll remove the 2 that have been vandalized because it's causing crime, it's a risk for crime, but not any consideration to Black people. And one of our city councilmen, Charlie Rivenbark, essentially said that Black people just must not think very highly of themselves. And that was his response to our whole civil engagement in 2020, so.
Wow. Okay. Do we have any more questions? You can raise your hand so that you can get a mic. Also, I know Ranya's going around passing out a sheet in terms of questions when we do the breakout in just a little bit. So if you want to be thinking about those as you're listening to the answers. We have, huh? There were? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So Triangle Mutual Aid is a large mutual aid in the Triangle, which is a pretty wealthy, pretty white area. And while it is not 100% white, it draws a lot of upper middle class white activists into it. And when we respond to need, something like the recent Chantel flooding is so effing literal. Like, it took out all the Section 8 housing in Orange County, because for some reason, all the poor people live below the floodplain line. Wonder why. So, racism, very simple, very historical. Our job is, in those moments, it's a lot of educating the people who show up. Our job is to collect buckets of resources and move them to where the need is, and to perpetually remind the mutual aid activists that they're not defining the need, that the people who were flooded are defining the need. Again, this thing about nonprofits, we are not a nonprofit, and we don't have to account for where every penny goes. Unlike any other organization, we were able to move about $50,000 directly into impacted people's hands to spend however the hell they felt, right? Because they're the ones who know what that need is. So it's a perpetual education thing. I will say there's also a second class of sort of white people in the area who the people with a lot of resources. And this comes with the sort of what was the phrase? The freeing the oppressors sort of thing, where there are these people who in these moments, especially around the politics, are feeling afraid. And all of a sudden, their wealth isn't protecting them the way that they thought it was. All of a sudden, their property isn't doing what it thought it was, and they're reaching out to me, and I'm getting really interesting phone calls from people who own hundreds of acres saying, can you come find a group of community people to grow food on my land and to distribute and to build houses here, and can I shelter immigrants on my land because I have some land? And that, to me, is a beautiful thing to encourage and to say that that is a path for some of those people. We don't need them to just give $20 donations a month. I want it all. I want the property. I want to communalize all of that.
Yes. And we'll figure out how to put it into community ownership.
That's right. I know someone.
Were all your questions answered? Governance.
Oh.
Yes.
What was the governance question again?
Collective governance?
So what governance looks like within the guild is actually shifting, because like I said, we went from 4 people and we were all the directors and the 4 of us are the co-owners, to now there's 7 of us, and we're like, oh, there's not just one person making the decision. I have help with things now. So actually, and I wish David could have been here, David Ferris, who is our education and our CSC education and movement building director now, in working out and I think I had the chart for the governance for the Community Stewardship Trust. Our governance within the company mirrors the model that we're using for the Community Stewardship Trust, where we're using a circles model of making decisions within those circles and then coming together, which is also just a resource management thing for us that's been really helpful. So, yeah, actually. And the model for the Community Stewardship Trust itself is a 2-board model. So we have the Stewardship Board, which is elected, and then the Board of Directors, which is right now the first Board of Directors has been appointed because we don't have a base of investors yet. So the Stewardship Board is the means by which we're one person, one vote for the shareholders. And then with the circles within that as we build up our base of folks. And I love, these illustrations are new also, and I love them. They're really cool. And the way it's, I mean, we can be, right now, we are the operator of the properties. We can be voted out as the operator at some point. I hope that never happens, but maybe at some point we don't want to operate the properties and we've moved on to doing other things. So yeah, it's something that can grow and develop as well as we grow.
Great. I see a hand, a couple hands in the middle.
Good afternoon to everybody. I would like to direct the question to maybe a senior moment, but I forgot your name, the young lady with the workers cooperative. Black lady with the afro. Okay. What is your name, please? Dani. Dani? Yes. Okay, Dani. I'm interested, because I can't remember all those acronyms, whatever they stand for. But I'm interested to know how much involvement. I see on your presentation there are people of your age. And I'm just wondering, what are you doing, or what's the involvement of your senior citizen population?
That is a wonderful question. I don't actually. Sorry. What's funny, when I said we started as 4 people, I am the oldest person on the team. And I just turned 41 yesterday.
Oh, well, happy birthday.
Where we know that this has to be intergenerational work. And we know that we are all really young in this game. So as far as our, especially our board of directors within the CST, we have an intergenerational board of directors. For me, it still doesn't go, we're pulling in more voices but in our working with community over the past 5 years, we have elders within the community that we've been working hand in hand with and making sure that those are the people that we're running everything by, that we are in lockstep with. I would love to have more elders on the actual board of directors, but it's like, I ain't doing all that work. And I get it.
Me too.
That is who we run everything through, and that is who we are making sure is at the table. And definitely within the like the circles structure, a lot of the folks who have been the most engaged with us over this process of growing have been the seniors in the community. That's who we know. And just to even say that, as the communications person and we're sending out everything over email and we're sending out everything via social media, I know that when I'm in Atlanta, I gotta go show up and say hello face to face. And have a conversation face to face and have coffee face to face. Because we have to shift the way that we engage so that we are incorporating everybody and not just those of us who have a phone attached to the hip.
There you go. And don't forget whose shoulders you're standing on, okay?
Exactly.
All right.
Never.
Thank you.
Next question out there.
Hi, all. Thank you for this discussion. I have one comment first and then a question about capital. I worked with my neighbors to win their homes from a white environmentalist group, the River Association, who are also slumlords in Durham. We won it they are vulnerable because they rely on local volunteers and funding, and so we got them to hand it over for $1 for free, effectively. But normally with land trusts and stuff, you need capital, which is always the problem. So back to the comment, y'all take over the white environmentalist orgs. They have a lot of land. And two, how do you raise the capital for these awesome land trust projects?
So we actually, I knew I wasn't gonna have time in the slides for it, but we actually have an integrated capital fund called Ground Cover. I think our last ground cover raise was $3 million, and so the initial capital for this first building we have, that was actually a grant, that was philanthropy, to purchase it. The development funds that's basically the base of a lot of the work we do as developers, is figuring out the capital stack. And that's why it took us, I think, 3 years to get from that grant to breaking ground because we had to figure out what does that capital stack look like in a way that's going to be sustainable, because that's actually what we're trying to do, is shift. Normally when you build affordable housing, it's based on tax breaks and it's based on these incentives, and those run out after a while, and then you have a balloon where it's no longer within the bounds of affordable because you've got to pay back your investors. We're operating on incredibly patient capital, like 1% financing, that is able to sustain this over time. So a lot of the work is getting the capital and getting people to move their money into these reparative spaces where it needs to be, and operating on that guilt. This is what you need to be spending your money on, and where you need to be directing it to actually make things better for everyone. And we've also been foundations that are spending down. We've been engaged in a lot of that as well, because this wealth hoarding isn't even doing you any favors anymore. Distribute that to the organizations who are using it and applying it and deploying it in sustainable ways.
Great. I see another hand. I think we have 5 more minutes for questions.
I had a similar question, but I see Erin wanting to respond to that. I had the same question, but I wanted to hear from Fertile Ground and Industrial Commons also, all of you actually, in terms of how you all are raising funds for your projects, and in particular, if you have aversions to certain types of money, and accepting funds from certain organizations.
So Fertile Ground is a 9,000 square foot grocery space. It will have a classroom and ultimately an urban farm. The total build is $11 million, and that includes constructing the store and operating it for a year. We have been raising funds in different ways. The first thing is through owners. They pay a common share, which is either $25 or $100, and that is their governing share. So that's the share that provides the vote. We also have a preferred share option, and that preferred share option is where we're asking owners to invest in the co-op, and that share is $1,000. And it can be paid over 6 months at $165 for 5 months, and then $166 for the 6th month. We are also grantees of the Katali Foundation. So I saw the image of Nemaka Agbo, which you could bring back up with your first image, and she has a restorative justice framework there and a spin down. And so we've received money from the Katali Foundation. We've also received support from Blue Cross Blue Shield, from the John Rex Endowment, from the Babcock Foundation, and I'm happy to talk to folks about other places. And then the other thing that we're actually trying, which is new to us, is this concept of a convertible note. So foundations and philanthropy, foundations give away 5% of their assets, and they have to do that over 3 years, so that's kind of law. That other 95% is sitting in the stock market. And so we're trying to give them spend down the money, give away the money, turn over the assets as you're talking about. Also to give that 95% to community-based strategies. And we want no interest for as long as possible. Like, can we get no interest for 7 years and then even try to organize them forgiving the investment so that we can give that asset, which is that cash asset, over to our owners in dividends. So you join, you paid $100, and then maybe in 10 years we could give you $300 or something like that. You know, this is our goal. So grants, sales from the store when it opens, preferred shares, and what we are really trying to do, which I don't know if we'll make it, is to open debt-free. And we talk about how Southeast Raleigh has paid its debt service. In fact, all enslaved ancestors of black people have paid our debt service. Our ancestors paid our debt service. So we are trying those strategies, but I am most interested also in what you have to say about where you're getting. No, like, great job with Industrial Commons. So this is going to be a good lesson for us.
I don't know how good of a lesson. I'm not the finance person over there. But I can give you kind of an overview of how we're funded. We're about 60-40, so 60 grant funded. So the Industrial Commons is, I'm going to use an example of how we're funded by using our former model of how we organize. We reorganized, but I'm still trying to get acclimated to that. So imagine a pie, and the top part are for-profit businesses, or for-profit enterprises, and then the bottom part are your nonprofit programming, like your workforce development, leadership development, professional development, and the for-profits. There's a certain percentage that comes back to support the nonprofit programming. Internally, that's how it works. But just kind of a breakdown of some of our grants. We have grants. For example, J.M. Kaplan, we were one of the recipients of that. When we purchased the land, which was a brownfield, used to be a furniture company that had burnt down. We had money from the EPA to do some of the brownfield cleanup. We've gotten funds from Dogwood Health Trust. We've gotten funds from Trust for Civic Life. But one of our biggest funders right now is the National Science Foundation, which we don't know how that's going to go with, like, everything that's going on. But they had designated 10 areas of opportunities all across the U.S., and 2 of them ended up in North Carolina, designating 2, and we were one of them, which was our work for textile recycling. So we've received funds from them that'll help us build out our innovation campus. So a mix of public, private, and our own profits. For that property, we were also written into the General Assembly to receive some funding from them too. So that's kind of just an overview. Yeah.
I want to offer one other thing. We also got a capital grant from Wake County that was reimbursable for $1 million. So there's municipal organizing that can be done to get the local governments to give from the capital money that's also coming from the feds.
Okay.
Your question, Courtney, we answered? Yeah, I shall.
Okay. Is that it? Okay.
Hi.
All right.
I just have one question.
One more question. Okay.
So could you give some insights about how you teach others to do what you've done? And are there any examples of communities, places, cities where you try to get together with community groups to start along the path of where you are? Or maybe give a picture of the peers that you share insights with to keep things going?
Yeah. I think that's a great question. And that's something that we started doing at the Industrial Commons. We had a lot of people who were either starting or midway or stuck somewhere, and they really wanted to learn best practices from us. And we, you say sometimes we're sailing on the seas as we build the ship, and then it went to, like, we're shooting out in space as we're building the spaceship. And I'm like, sometimes y'all just put the cart before the horse. The work can be very chaotic sometimes, but we love to share our best practices. So we created ACE, which is an acronym for Accelerating Common Economies, where we've had people from all over the US and some from other countries. They come to the Industrial Commons. It happens once a year for a 3-day retreat, very, very deep dive into how we got started, how we networked, so who were our stakeholders, who were our partners, really sharing our resources, but it's best practices that they can take back to their communities and tweak according to what their challenges and their barriers are, because that's different everywhere, right? It may be housing for one area, maybe something else for another area. So we created that learning cohort once a year that they can come. Yeah.
That's incredible.
So when it's go time, when it's big disaster response time, a lot of people learn just by showing up and seeing the patterns. In between, no group is too small. I do a lot of small group meetings, a lot of one-on-ones. Last Sunday, me and a colleague were presenting at a UCC church that wanted to get involved in mutual aid. I try to meet with these small groups, and I try to help them break out of the conceptualization of charity. And part of that is for them to stop getting their white selves together and saying, what can we do for those people? I have them look at each other and say, how can I really go deep? Who would I open my home to that I feel comfortable with now? And how can I learn to feel that comfortable with the next neighbor? How can I learn to see people as people? How can I recognize in these times of crisis that we need to go beyond the surface? And so I really encourage people to dig deep with each other in whatever ways they're able.
Okay, so we're going to wrap it up now, but you will have an opportunity to talk with the panel before we leave today, after this is over. I think that that's a good sort of segue into the breakout sessions at the tables. The sheet that you have, as we are looking at like what kinds of ways are we looking at funding and activation of solidarity economy. You don't have to be an expert at this to do it. You just want to be able to kind of build the systems that that we all care about for each other. And so we're going to take about our presentation and what your hopes are as a result of this discussion and the folks that are here. So we'll start on the end here with Dani and go around.
So I just wanted to share something that's kept coming up as I've had smaller conversations in the past 20 minutes. But to that point of you don't have to be an expert to do this. Of the four of us that originally started the company, the four original directors of the company, I always say I'm the only one.
Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. I always say that of the four of us, I'm the only one that doesn't have a degree in finance or development. I just make it all sound real good. Because I'm not an expert. Before we started, we had an apartment building that we were leasing out the building and trying some things out and experimenting. I just lived there. Because I'd been displaced from my home in West End. The Guild was how I was able to move back to Atlanta and reestablish myself. And I became the community manager of the building. And Avery, who's the director of the Community Stewardship Trust, was my across the hall neighbor. And Antrish, who's our architect and our director of development, we were his thesis project for his master's in development. And when we got the grant to build our own building, it was like, hey, you're an architect. You want to design this building? And now we co-own the company. We came to this point from embodying it and literally living in it and making this is what we want to do. This is what we want to build, and this is what we want to grow. And we didn't come at it from that perspective as we're experts in this field. We've built the plane while we're flying it. So that is possible and doable, and we just have to show people how possible that is and bring them into it in an approachable way.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to affirm that as well. Like, I was not an expert when I started doing mutual aid. I was 19 years old. I had no real organization experience or no real politic before that. I was in a super precarious housing situation. And I love my community. I love Black people, and I know that we deserve better. And I did a lot of trial and error, and that's how I got to the position that I'm in now. There was a lot of unprincipled moments, and yeah, we just had to work through it because, again, the ultimate goal is liberation. I know that there is something better than what we're experiencing now, and that's what I keep at the forefront of what I'm doing.
Thank you. Love that. Love that.
I like to say that mutual aid is simultaneously the most radical thing we could be doing and also the most natural thing we can do. It's something that someone got the Peter Kropotkin book yesterday and got that. If you read that book, the first 3 chapters are about how mutual aid is an essential part of evolution, that contrary to what people take away from Darwin, if you look at every animal species on the planet, the ones that cooperate with each other better are the ones that survive. And that is there, and these words that are radical, things like anarcho-communism, those are words that 19th century philosophers came up with to label things as they were trying to understand the heritage that they had lost. That us white people have buried and destroyed our own heritage and are looking around, trying to find big words, trying to look at other communities, trying to dig deep into our own past to find out what are those natural patterns of life and taking care of each other. They're still there underneath. We can still find them.
Thank you.
Hard to follow up on that. Just really quick, I want to give you some context for the Industrial Commons in case you do want to deep dive a little more. Our website is theindustrialcommons.org. If you go to Learn and Connect, we have open houses throughout the year. Can be individuals or groups that can come and visit. Our 2026 dates are not up yet, but look for it in the later part of this year. They will be up. We also have a one-pager for our ACE Institute, which is the Accelerating Common Economies cohort that, if you're interested in joining, will happen again sometime in the spring in 2026. So feel free to deep dive all of that. And then I'll just leave you. I'm always taking other people's words because they're much smarter and they, have deeper reflection. On our trip to Italy, we met a gentleman named Umberto. He's in his late 80s, and he was a child that survived the Nazi genocide of 15 villages in northern Italy towards the end of about 1943. And I asked him how he has reconciled trauma, PTSD under fascism, because my parents have never reconciled those coming out of the Vietnam War. And he said, you don't, but the biggest lesson I learned is that indifference is the most dangerous thing. So if you see wrong, protest, make your voice heard. Indifference is dangerous.
Great, thank you.
I think I want to close with love being the antidote. I actually believe that, which surprises me some days, because I'm so angry and in a rage-filled state. And so I just want to remind us that love is actually the answer. It's the most powerful force in the cosmos. And our ability to love each other, even when it's very difficult and hard, is very important. I want to also bring in a lesson from Saladin, from Sala, that I carry in my heart all the time, which is criticism, self-criticism, and principled struggle, which means if you're wondering what's wrong, look in the mirror. It's hard to say that, but it's true. It's true. It is. I swear to God. I swear to God, it's true. It doesn't mean that you're at fault for everything, but there is a connection to how you're showing up or how we are showing up that is connected to how we're being oppressed. Okay? So criticism, self-criticism, and be in principled struggle. And I want to say it's hard. It's really hard to keep coming back to a movement that abuses us. But we have to keep coming back because we're doing this work with we're traumatized ourselves, and then we're doing it with traumatized people. And if you don't believe me, all I can say to you is you can't get in the water and not be wet. I am so sorry to disappoint you. That's the reality. And so those are the things that I wanna like drop on here. Then I also wanna ask that you go to Fertile Ground's website, which is www.fertileground.coop. And that you pull it up, that you consider clicking that link on being involved in joining our newsletter, and that you consider sending our website to one Black person you know in Raleigh. Did you hear what I said to you?
Yes.
Would you please visualize this person? Would you please send that text message and say, I heard about Fertile Ground, would you check it out? Because even if they don't, they've heard about it from you. So then the next time they hear about it, they'll be closer to us. Do you follow me?
Yes.
Because most people got to hear something 14 times before they do anything.
Yeah.
This is true. I can give you research on it. It's 14. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And then I want to say, one day we'll all be free. One day we'll all be free. One day we'll all be free. Be it on this side, be it on this side, we'll all be free. One day we'll all be free. One day we'll all be free from the river to the sea. Be it on this side, be it on this side, we'll all be free.
Thank you. Let's thank the panel again. Incredible. You will have an opportunity to talk with them after lunch and get information and any other questions. I do want to say one thing. As a member of the People's Environmental Justice Advisory Council, we have met with communities in Greensboro, in Tucson, Arizona, and we are going to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania next month. Our website is peopleshearing.com. If you want to follow that information, there are people across the country that are going through the same kinds of issues that you are, and we are trying to build this globally, the power that we know we have. And I'm going to turn it back over to Rania. Thank you, guys.
While Ranya's
Thank
coming
you.
up, I just wanted to give our website really quick. It's www.theguild.community, so not .com, it's the whole word community. And we are launching that Solidarity Economy coursework publicly. So get on our newsletter, go on the website for more information.
Thank you all, and a shout out to Anita Cunnigham for moderating this panel. Shout out to you all, thank you. There's an individual who popped in really quickly and then she popped right out and is continuing to do her work, and that individual is Lisa Sorg. And I just wanted to give a shout out, even though she's not in the room, I still wanted to give a shout out for Lisa, because Lisa is one of those environmental journalists that walks the talk. She walks the talk. When we call her, she comes, and she calls us to see how she can. So she's actually outside conducting an interview on data centers to make sure that the issue is pushed. And her mere presence reminded me that NCEJN, we are one of the paid members of the Public News Service. The Public News Service is like the Associated Press for good people. And yes, I don't like the Associated Press. So in the sense that by being a member of the Public News Service, we get at least 8 articles a year, which means we can suggest a topic. We can suggest, well, it's not suggestion. We give a topic. We tell them who we want to have interviewed in that topic. They write the article. That article goes out on the wire. And that article gets anywhere from 100,000 views to 1.5 million views. And it primarily gets distributed in rural communities, the communities that still read newspapers in this country. So I'm giving that as a shout out. If you have a story, God, that hurt the knees. If you have a story that you want to amplify, reach out to me. If you have a story that you want somebody else to be heard on, reach out to me. We not only have environmental journalists like Lisa Sorg and Will Outwater, we also have these other subscription services that I want to bring attention to. I also want to call our conductress of chaos, Dr. Dani Lynn Hunter, to come up to the stage to give a few announcements. And while she's coming up, I'm going to remind y'all, please turn off your Wi-Fi unless you are a volunteer. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Yes, please turn off your Wi-Fi. Our session after lunch is going to require all of our volunteers to have good access to the internet. If you happened to be here yesterday during our panel yesterday evening and you saw how well Zoom didn't work, please turn off your Wi-Fi. If you haven't yet, please sign our booklet for Mama Naima. We want to show her love and appreciation for everything that she's given us and all of the wisdom she shared with us over the years. So please sign our booklet. If you haven't yet, come find me. I've been trying to pass it around throughout the day. Also, is this yours? It was left at the fireside chat last night, so if it is, I have it at this table right here.